Hello, fellas. We're building a community to share stories with the world. If you have a story worth telling, I'd love to feature on our channel. This will help you share your voice and become part of our growing community. Thank you. Now, let's begin with our story titled, My Wife Let Her Failed Businessman Brother Change the Locks on My House While I Was Out of Town. I am Mark, a man who always believed that a sturdy foundation could weather any storm. As a structural engineer based in the rugged, unpredictable climate of Colorado, my entire life was built on the principles of integrity, balance, and trust. I was ambitious but deeply family-oriented, raised to believe that a man's word is his bond and his home is his sanctuary. Unfortunately, my fatal flaw was projecting my own moral compass onto others, trusting people implicitly, especially those who claimed the title of family. I believed that blood, or even marriage, meant loyalty. I was about to learn that the most devastating earthquakes don't happen in the ground. They happen in your living room. My parents, Arthur and Helen, taught me everything I knew about love. They were traditional, unwavering, and possessed a deep, unshakable faith in the sanctity of family. They were the kind of people who would give you the shirt off their back, but they also possessed a fierce, uncompromising sense of right and wrong. They believed in justice, and they never shied away from standing by the truth, even when the truth was deeply unpopular. It was my parents' enduring marriage that made me crave a deep connection, which led me to Sarah. Before she became a ghost of the woman I loved, Sarah was warm, fiercely loyal to her roots, and possessed a captivating, quiet charm. She worked as a freelance graphic designer, always eager to please, always bending over backward to make sure everyone around her was comfortable. What I initially saw as empathy, I would later recognize as a toxic, deeply ingrained need to appease her domineering family at any cost. I remember the afternoon Sarah and I met at a small, crowded coffee shop in downtown Boulder. The snow was falling heavily outside, and the cafe was packed with shivering locals. "Excuse me," I said, pointing to the empty chair across from her small table. "Is anyone sitting here? Every other spot is taken, and my coffee is rapidly losing its will to live." Sarah looked up from her laptop, pushing a stray lock of brown hair behind her ear, her cheeks flushed. "Oh no, go ahead. I'm just fighting with this logo design. It's winning." I sat down, brushing the snow off my coat. "I'm Mark, and if it helps, I'm a structural engineer. I build things to not fall down. Maybe I can engineer a better logo for you." She laughed, a bright, genuine sound that instantly warmed the space between us. "I am Sada, and unless you can engineer a way to make neon green and pastel pink look professional, I think I'm on my own." "That sounds like a crime against color theory," I chuckled, taking a sip of my dark roast. "Who is making you do that?" "My brother, Derek," she sighed, a fleeting look of exhaustion crossing her face. "He's starting a new fitness supplement company. He's very specific about his vision." "Ah, family business," I nodded sympathetically. "Always the hardest clients. You have to love them, even when their taste is questionable." "Exactly," she smiled, her eyes softening. "But he's family. You do what you have to do to support them, right?" That conversation was the spark. We talked for 3 hours as the snow piled up against the glass. We connected over our shared love for the mountains, our career ambitions, and, ironically, our devotion to our families. A year later, we were standing at the altar. I bought a beautiful, sprawling 4-bedroom house on the outskirts of Denver, nestled in the pines. It was my pride and joy, a testament to years of grueling work. But lurking in the background of our wedding photos, always smiling a little too sharply, was Derek. Derek was Sarah's older brother, the undisputed golden boy of their family. He was handsome, charismatic, and initially came across as caring and responsible. But beneath the designer suits and the practiced charm was a gaping black hole of insecurity and entitlement. He was a serial entrepreneur whose businesses always mysteriously failed, leaving a trail of unpaid investors. He harbored a deep, toxic jealousy toward anyone who achieved the success he believed he was inherently owed. He looked at my house, my career, and my stability not with happiness for his sister, but with a simmering, resentful hunger. Derek's parents, Richard and Martha, were the architects of his narcissism. They were profoundly entitled people who believed the world owed them a debt. They were self-centered, obsessed with appearances, and viewed their son as a misunderstood genius, while treating Sarah as an afterthought whose only purpose was to facilitate Derek's grand plans. They never respected me. They only respected the financial stability I brought to their daughter. The trigger event happened 3 years into our marriage. Derek's latest venture, a luxury car detailing service, collapsed spectacularly. He was evicted from his high-rise apartment and was drowning in debt. Sarah came to me in tears, begging me to let him stay in our guest room just for a few weeks to get back on his feet. I was extremely reluctant. I cherished my privacy, and Derek's chaotic energy always put me on edge. "Mark, please," Sarah pleaded one evening in our kitchen. "He's sleeping in his car. He's my brother. We have all this space. It's only temporary." "Sarah, you know how he gets," I sighed, rubbing my temples. "He takes over. He doesn't respect boundaries. But if he really has nowhere else to go, he can stay for exactly 1 month. That's it." I had a major structural inspection in Chicago that required me to be out of state for 3 weeks. I figured it was the perfect time. I wouldn't have to deal with Derek's presence for the bulk of his stay. I kissed my wife goodbye, told Derek to respect the house, and boarded a plane. I was building a future for us. I had no idea they were actively dismantling it. When I returned to Denver, exhausted and longing for my own bed, my key didn't turn the front door lock. I jiggled it. Nothing. The deadbolt had been completely swapped out. Confused, I rang the doorbell. The door opened to reveal Derek, wearing my expensive silk bathrobe, holding a glass of my scotch. He looked completely at ease. "Derek, why didn't my key work? Why did you change the locks?" I demanded, dropping my suitcase on the porch. "Oh, hey Mark," Derek smirked, leaning against the doorframe. "Yeah, about that. This is my primary residence now. You can't just barge in." I stared at him, my brain struggling to process the sheer audacity of his words. "Are you insane? This is my house. I own it. Move out of the way." "Actually, under Colorado law, since I've established residency here and you voluntarily left the premises, I have squatter's rights," Derek said, his voice dripping with condescension. "You can't legally cross this threshold without a formal eviction notice, which takes about 6 months in this county." "Where the hell is Sarah?" I roared, my blood pressure spiking to dangerous levels. Sarah appeared behind Derek. She wouldn't meet my eyes. She was holding a stack of mail. "Mark, just calm down. You're making a scene." "Calm down? He changed the locks on my house. Tell him to pack his bags right now. Sarah, we are calling the police." "We can't do that, Mark," Sarah said softly, crossing her arms. Derek needs this space. His new investors need to see he has a stable, upscale operating base. You have the money to rent an apartment downtown for a while. It's just a house. I felt the ground vanish beneath my feet. It's just a house? I paid the mortgage on this house for 5 years. It's our home. You're siding with him on stealing our home. Don't use that word. Richard, my father-in-law, suddenly stepped into view from my living room, scowling at me. "Derek is utilizing family assets to recover from a temporary setback. You are being incredibly selfish, Mark." "Family assets?" I yelled, completely losing my composure. "My name is on the deed. Only my name. You people are absolute parasites." Derek laughed, a harsh, grating sound. "Call me a parasite all you want. I've filed a temporary lease agreement with the county. Unless you want to drag your own wife into a messy, public civil dispute, you'll walk away. We own this now. I'm calling the police." I pulled my phone from my pocket, my hands shaking with pure, unadulterated rage. "If you call the cops," Sarah's voice suddenly turned cold, a tone I had never heard from her before, "I will file for divorce, Mark. I will take half of everything you own, including the equity in this house, and I will give it directly to my brother. Walk away." The betrayal felt like a physical knife twisting in my gut. The woman I loved, the woman I had sworn to protect, was holding a gun to my head so her deadbeat brother could steal the roof over my head. I looked at the three of them, a wall of entitled, delusional madness. I didn't walk away. I marched forward, shoving my shoulder into the heavy oak door to force it open. Derek retaliated instantly, throwing a heavy punch aimed straight for my jaw. "Hey, back the hell up." Ethan, my closest friend and a guy who had given me a ride from the airport, suddenly sprinted up the driveway. Ethan was a former military police officer turned private security consultant. He was fiercely loyal, incredibly rational, and didn't flinch at chaos. He grabbed Derek's wrist mid-swing, twisting it sharply until Derek yelped and dropped to his knees on the porch. "Let go of my son. Assault. Assault. Martha, my mother-in-law, shrieked from the hallway. I'm recording this entire interaction, Ethan said calmly, holding up his phone with his free hand. Your son just attempted to strike the legal homeowner. Mark, step back. Do not engage. They're trying to bait you into a domestic violence charge so they can file a restraining order and keep the house. It's a classic squatter scam. I stepped back, breathing heavily, the realization of their cunning trap washing over me. They wanted me to get violent. They wanted me in jail. Let's go, Mark, Ethan commanded, releasing Derek and shoving him back inside. We fight this with paper, not fists. They just made the biggest mistake of their lives. The next few weeks were a descent into a psychological hell. I moved into a cheap motel on the highway. The isolation was deafening. I fell into a deep, crushing depression. The woman I had promised my life to had orchestrated a hostile takeover of my sanctuary. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Derek wearing my bathrobe, standing in my doorway. But I wasn't fighting alone. Ethan became my anchor. While I was paralyzed by grief, he was digging. He found out that Derek wasn't just squatting. He was attempting to leverage the house. I needed a legal shark, and Ethan introduced me to Ms. Vance. She was a high-powered real estate litigator, a woman in her 50s with eyes like flint and a mind like a steel trap. She didn't offer sympathy. She offered strategy. Squatters' rights, or adverse possession, take 18 years in Colorado, Mr. Sterling, Ms. Vance said as she reviewed my deed in her downtown office. What he has done is file a fraudulent lease agreement to establish civil tenancy, forcing us into eviction court. It's a delay tactic, but we're not going to play defense. We're going to bury them. The friction escalated rapidly. Sarah drained our joint checking account of $30,000 to pay for Derek's defense attorney. It was the ultimate slap in the face. I was completely broke, locked out of my own life. That was when my parents stepped in. We didn't raise a victim, Mark, my father said, handing me a cashier's check that drained a significant portion of his retirement savings. You fight them. You fight them until they have nothing left. We are with you. The breaking point, the moment my depression violently transformed into pure, unyielding rage, happened 2 weeks later. Derek was hosting a massive launch party at my house for his new fake business. He had invited extended family, local influencers, and potential investors. Ethan caught wind of it through social media. I decided it was time to crash the party. I walked through the front doors of my own home. The place was packed. Loud music thumped against the walls I had painted. Derek was standing by the fireplace, holding a microphone, making a toast. Sarah was standing next to him, smiling like the perfect hostess. Turn the music off, I roared, my voice echoing over the heavy bass. I walked straight to the sound system and yanked the power cord from the wall. The sudden silence in the room was deafening. 50 pairs of eyes turned to me. Mark, what the hell are you doing here? Derek hissed, his face turning pale. You're trespassing. Sarah, call the police. I'm the sole owner of this property, I shouted, addressing the entire room of shocked guests. Derek hasn't launched a business. He is a fraud, a squatter, and a thief who forged a lease to steal this house from me while I was out of state. Shut your mouth, Richard yelled, stepping forward, his face purple with rage. You are embarrassing this family. You are not my family. I fired back, my eyes locking onto Sarah. She looked terrified, stepping behind her brother. Sarah, you let him change the locks. You emptied our bank account. You told me you would divorce me if I didn't surrender my home to this parasite. Mark, please, you're ruining everything. Sarah cried, tears welling in her eyes. Can't we just talk about this in private? No, we do this right here. You want to protect him? Fina. I reached into my pocket, pulled off my wedding band, and threw it hard on the hardwood floor. It bounced with a sharp, metallic ping that rang through the dead silent room. I'm dropping the divorce papers tomorrow. You can have your brother, but you will not have my house. You're pathetic, Derek sneered, try to recover his bravado in front of his guests. My lawyers will tie you up in court for years. I'm going to sell this place out from under you to fund my company. You can't sell what you don't own, you absolute idiot. Ethan's voice rang out as he walked through the front door, holding a thick manila folder. In fact, you can't even get a loan. Mark, tell the room what we found. I looked at Derek, a cold, triumphant smile spreading across my face. You tried to take out a home equity line of credit against the property last week. But to do that, you needed my signature. So you forged it. Derek's arrogant smirk instantly vanished. The color completely drained from his face. That's a lie. It's a felony, Ethan corrected, tossing the folder onto the coffee table. wire fraud, mortgage fraud, and identity theft. We handed the evidence over to the district attorney this morning. The police aren't coming to arrest Mark for trespassing. They're on their way right now to arrest you for fraud. Chloe, Derek's glamorous girlfriend who had been clinging to his arm all night, suddenly stepped away from him, looking horrified. Derek? Is this true? Chloe demanded, her voice shrill. You told me you bought this house. You told me you were a millionaire. Baby, no, listen, it's a misunderstanding, Derek stammered, reaching for her. Don't touch me, you broke loser. Chloe slapped his hand away, grabbed her expensive purse, and stormed out the front door, pushing past Ethan without a second glance. The room erupted into chaotic whispers. The investors Derek was trying to woo were already heading for the exits. The party was over. The climax didn't happen in my living room. It happened 3 weeks later in a fluorescent-lit county courtroom. Ms. Vance stood before the judge, a mountain of irrefutable evidence on her desk. Derek sat with his public defender. The money Sarah stole had run out quickly, looking small, terrified, and utterly defeated. Your Honor, Ms. Vance began, her voice slicing through the courtroom air. The respondent claims a legal tenancy based on a lease agreement dated October 12th. However, subpoenaed flight records prove that the respondent, Derek Miller, was in Las Vegas on October 12th, attempting to gamble his way out of previous debts. He could not have physically signed this document in Denver on that date. The judge, a no-nonsense woman who looked completely exhausted by Derek's presence, glared over her glasses. Is this true, Mr. Miller? I can explain, Your Honor, Derek mumbled, his voice shaking. Furthermore, Ms. Vance pressed the attack. We have sworn affidavit from the bank confirming that the signature on the HELIC application was forged, utilizing IP addresses traced directly back to the Wi-Fi router inside my client's stolen home. This is not a tenancy dispute. This is a brazen, criminal extortion attempt. The judge didn't even hesitate. She struck down the fake lease, granted an immediate emergency eviction order, and referred the forged documents directly to the criminal prosecutor. Derek was escorted out of the courtroom by bailiffs. Richard and Martha sat in the gallery, weeping, their delusions of grandeur finally shattered by the cold, hard gavel of reality. Standing on the porch of my home that evening, the locksmith installing a heavy-duty deadbolt, I took my first full breath in months. The house was a mess. Derek had trashed the place, leaving empty bottles and garbage everywhere. But it was mine again. The foundation was intact. I had survived the earthquake. Rebuilding my life took time. I threw myself into my engineering work. I started going to therapy to deal with the profound betrayal trauma. I painted over the walls, bought new furniture, and slowly exorcised the ghosts of my ex-wife's family from my sanctuary. I was finding my independence, learning to trust myself again. 6 months later, the dust had settled. Derek was serving 3 years in a state facility for mortgage fraud. His parents had bankrupted themselves paying for his criminal defense and had moved into a small apartment. And Sarah was entirely alone. It was a Tuesday night, raining heavily, when the doorbell rang. I checked the security cameras Ethan had installed. It was Sarah. She looked drenched, exhausted, and remarkably fragile. Against my better judgment, I opened the door, leaving the heavy chain engaged. Mark, she sobbed, rain mixing with her tears. Please, let me in. It's freezing out here. You don't live here anymore, Sarah. We signed the divorce papers a month ago. What do you want? I asked, my voice completely flat. I have nowhere to go, she cried, clutching her coat around her. My parents won't speak to me. Derek blames me for not getting him a better lawyer. I lost everything, Mark. I was so stupid. I was brainwashed by them. Please, I'm so sorry. I love you. You don't love me, I said, staring at the woman I once thought was my soulmate. You love the stability I provided, and you love the approval your family gave you for exploiting me. You made your choice when you threatened to divorce me to protect a thief. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Please, Mark, I'm begging you. Just let me stay the night. We can fix this. We can go to counseling. I'll do anything. I'll make it up to you for the rest of my life. There is nothing to fix, I replied coldly. The foundation is completely gone. You need to leave my property before I call the police. You can't do this to me. Sarah's sadness instantly morphed into a desperate, frantic anger. I am your wife. I deserve a second chance. You owe me. I owe you absolutely nothing, I said, and calmly shut the heavy wooden door, locking the deadbolt with a satisfying click. 10 minutes later, I heard the sound of shattering glass. I grabbed the heavy flashlight I kept by the door and sprinted into the kitchen. Sarah had thrown a heavy patio brick through the back sliding glass door. She was climbing through the shattered glass, cutting her hands in the process, her eyes wild with manic desperation. "If you won't let me in, I'll force my way in," she screamed, stumbling into the kitchen, bleeding onto the tile. "This is half my house. You can't keep me out of my own life." "Don't move another inch," I commanded, pulling out my phone and dialing 911. "I have a home intruder." "Yes, my ex-wife. She just broke through the glass door. I need officers here immediately." "Mark, hang up the phone." She lunged at me, trying to grab the device, smearing blood on my shirt. I sidestepped her easily, keeping my distance. "You broke into my house, Sarah. You just sealed your own fate." When the police arrived, they found her sitting on the kitchen floor, sobbing uncontrollably. As they handcuffed her and read her rights, she looked at me with a mixture of absolute hatred and pathetic pleading. "Tell them to stop, Mark. Please. Tell them it's a misunderstanding." "Officer," I said, looking right through her, "I want to press full charges for breaking and entering, destruction of property, and trespassing. I also need to file for a permanent restraining order." "You're a monster," she shrieked as they dragged her out the front door. "I gave you the best years of my life. You'll die alone in this stupid house." I didn't die alone. I swept up the broken glass that night, feeling a strange, profound sense of closure. The infection was finally completely removed from my life. I filed the criminal charges, secured the restraining order, and watched from a distance as Sarah faced the consequences of her own toxic loyalty. 2 years later, the house was entirely mine, filled with light, new memories, and peace. My career was flourishing. Ethan and I still had a beer on the porch every Friday. And most importantly, I had started dating again. I met a woman who understood boundaries, who valued honesty over blind family allegiance, and who built her own stability. I learned that true family isn't determined by blood or a marriage certificate. It's determined by the people who stand with you when the walls start shaking. I had lost everything I thought I wanted, only to realize I had finally gained the one thing I truly needed, an unshakable foundation built on my own self-respect.